The role of feeding mankind has always fallen to farmers. They have carried out their responsibility across eras and civilizations. But this has not prevented the history of humanity from being studied with food shortages and famines. Still today, despite a massive change of scale, with agriculture having now become industrialized, over 1 billion people still suffer from hunger. And the goal the United Nations committed to reduce that figure by 2015 remains the challenge of the 21st century. In the future, remedies will be coming from new technological forms of nutrition which are of great interest to the agribusiness and the new internet giants, who are investing millions of dollars in innovative food supply startups.
The scientists say that we're going to have 9 billion people on our planet by 2050. We now have 7 billion people. According to the State Department here in the United States and other scientists around the world, farmers around this world are going to have to produce more food in the next 50 years than has been produced in the last 10,000 years combined.
We talk about world population growing by 80 million a year, but it's such a big number, people can't relate to it. But if you do it on a daily basis, 80 million a year means there'll be 219,000 people at the dinner table tonight who were not there last night. And tomorrow night, there'll be another 219,000. This growth of population is relentless. It happens every year, every day. It just keeps growing. But the earth and its land and water resources does not grow. It's finite. And we're pressing against the limits now. In the United States, we harvest about 400 million tons of grain per year. And of that, last year, 130 million tons was used to produce fuel for cars. And I think that's going to have to change.
What's very probably going to have to change is the American agricultural model, which over the last few decades has become the model for most developed countries. Driven by biotechnologies, it makes use of GMOs and high-yield seeds at a very early stage of the production process, and generates a system of production that is increasingly focused on industry and decreasingly on food. The most adversely affected area of declining grain stocks is food aid, which until recently was supplied from the American agricultural food surplus. It was therefore critical to come up with an alternative to traditional food aid. The main innovation came from France, and not from the US, in the form of a nutritional, peanut-based paste called Plumpy'nut, which rapidly became a reference in emergency food aid. The story of Plumpy'nut is a fitting tale through which to understand developments taking place in the international food aid sector as a whole.
La place du Plumpy'nut est une place importante, assez surprenante. Nous ne nous attendions pas à autant de développement, mais c'est le résultat de recherche, mais c'est aussi le résultat d'un certain nombre de produits que nous avons au niveau de Nutriset lancés depuis les années, depuis 1986. Ce n'est pas un produit qui est arrivé à partir de rien.
The major famine that struck Ethiopia in 1984 and 1985 remains a historical one, because it triggered a mass solidarity movement on a worldwide scale, which raised awareness of the sheer scale of the tragedy of hunger and of our inability to treat it without new therapeutic and preventative resources. The first of those therapeutic resources was Plumpy'nut.
Il a créé à lui seul une petite révolution, puisqu'il nous a permis de trouver une solution de traiter les enfants qui souffraient de malnutrition aiguë sévère à domicile. Et donc ça nous a permis de toucher beaucoup plus d'enfants et de les traiter avec un produit qui est spécialement destiné à ce type de population. Donc c'est ce qu'on appelle le RUTF, qui visait juste les enfants malnutris aiguës sévères, qui étaient des produits à base lipidique, avec des éléments comme des vitamines et des minéraux.
Nous avons déposé en 1997 un brevet sur ce produit, sans aucun problème, dans un certain nombre de pays. Et en 2005-2006, quand le produit a connu beaucoup de succès, un certain nombre de tiers se sont intéressés de façon plus proche au produit, ont certainement voulu l'imiter et se sont trouvés face à un problème de brevet.
In 2009, two American NGOs, very probably supported by powerful financial interests, filed a complaint in the US courts to try and obtain the right to manufacture the same product. But their case was dismissed, and Nutriset chose to grant its license to the African countries that needed it most.
Let's talk about Nutriset. Nutriset has been very generous with their patent. I mean, they have licensed it to affiliates all over Africa. You know, they have Plumpy Field Network, as they call it, manufacturing their products under license. So they are growing the products in Africa, they are manufacturing the products in Africa, and then they're giving away or selling the products in Africa. So I think the whole trend of the Food for Peace program here in the United States and most of the food security efforts from European efforts and all over the world are toward more and more highly fortified foods, foods that have extra nutrients in it for people, and particularly for young people and for infants. We need those extra fortified foods, and the whole trend is in that direction, away from bulk commodities toward fortified foods. And Nutriset really was a pioneer in that whole trend toward extra fortified foods, and deserve to have their research protected. I think that's only fair for a while.
Ethiopia, the very name of which still evokes famine and humanitarian disasters, has become a regional hub for the dissemination of resources and techniques in the fight against malnutrition. The Helena factory in Addis Ababa is highly comparable to the parent company Normandy. It follows exactly the same manufacturing process, research standards, and even quality control.
We have the capacity to produce nearly 10,000 tons of therapeutic foods, and this is mainly for use in Ethiopia and the neighboring countries. Ethiopia is very seriously affected with high prevalence of severe malnutrition. The need for such type of products is very, very high. Hence, it is unwise to bring foods of such kind from abroad while children are dying. So it's a question of sovereignty to make it food secure. So the government will be really getting its supply through WFP and UNICEF and other international NGOs to really deliver the required amount or quantities for this purpose.
How much weight gain do you expect?
We expect 2 kilo, 1 kilo.
In a month or
In a month, 2, 3. Yeah.
2 or 3? Whatever.
They took properly Plumpy'nut plus local foods. If the patient is severe malnutrition, we'll give Plumpy'nut.
Okay.
If it is moderate, we'll give plump sap. Plump sap. Follow up 108. 180.
À Action contre la faim, lorsqu'on a vu cette prolifération de produits, c'est vrai qu'on l'a accueilli de manière extrêmement positive parce que c'était autant d'outils qui nous étaient apportés pour travailler. En revanche, on a été relativement inquiet de cette espèce de courant et d'engouement autour des produits. Alors pourquoi? Parce que nous, on pense que les produits, c'est une partie de la réponse. Et que, en fait, pour travailler sur la sous-nutrition, il va falloir déployer et développer différents types de réponses. Donc le fait simplement de leur distribuer un produit à un instant T, et souvent sur un court terme, ne va pas du tout répondre à ce besoin-là, qui est ce besoin d'accompagnement, de savoir quoi donner à son enfant et à quel moment.
Maintenant, les malnutris, là, ils sont tous là dehors. Maintenant, on les regroupe, on leur fait un conseil nutritionnel pour prévenir la malnutrition et en cas de malnutrition, comment s'y prendre. Bon. Après, on leur montre comment donner le Plumpy'nut et comment préparer la farine aussi. Par jour, on peut avoir les malnutris jusqu'à 15, 20 comme ça. Les sévères et les modérés. À partir de 6 mois, là où l'enfant commence à prendre les aliments de complément, là aussi, il y a certaines femmes, faute de moyens, ils n'ont que le mil, la farine du mil et juste le riz. Donc, l'enfant ne peut pas avoir d'autres aliments, alimentation variée. Donc, il est obligé de tomber dans la malnutrition.
The population of Africa, currently at 900 million, will rise to 2 billion in 2050. The population of Niger alone will rise from 16 million to 45 million.
If we are going to feed the planet, we need the land in Africa to become productive. Most of the unused agricultural land in the world is in Africa. Most of the underutilized agricultural land is in Africa. So to achieve global food security, we must achieve African food security.
But there's no profit for teaching people how to grow their own food. And making sure that they have enough food for their families. Nobody makes any money off of that. Something has to be done about those hungry children. What do? Well, you can give them Plumpy'nut and these vitamin sprinkles and so forth. That will solve an instantaneous problem. But unless you're putting money and skill and assistance into trying to help people take over and grow their own foods and become self-sufficient in food, it's not going to work in the long term. But there's no benefit for the donor countries.
We have to recognize that products will never be the full answer to the problem. The full problem of food security involves supply chains, it involves farmers, it involves distribution systems, it involves access to money and economies. So we can't just solve a problem with a product. These products are part of the solution, but they are not the whole solution.
Alors aujourd'hui, moi, je doute particulièrement de la capacité de ces produits à avoir un impact de long terme sur la sous-nutrition. D'abord parce que est-ce qu'un État a la capacité d'acheter ce type de produit et de perfuser sa population avec? Moi, j'en doute. Et puis, c'est aussi oublier qu'on ignore les effets à long terme sur les enfants de ces produits-là. Beaucoup d'études ont montré qu'il fallait être extrêmement vigilant sur des gains de poids rapides sur des enfants âgés de moins de 2 ans. C'est-à-dire que ces produits-là, à forte teneur en lipides, peuvent donc provoquer des gains de poids rapides, ce qu'on recherche un petit peu, mais si ces gains de poids produisent une masse graisseuse au lieu de produire une masse maigre, c'est-à-dire au lieu de les faire grandir, hein, ce qu'on souhaite faire, eh bien il y a des risques qu'à terme ça provoque demain de l'obésité par exemple. Alors ça paraît un peu étrange que de la sous-nutrition et que le traitement de la sous-nutrition mène à l'obésité à l'âge adulte, hein, mais beaucoup d'études montrent qu'il faut être extrêmement vigilant et que demain on pourrait voir émerger des problèmes de santé publique très importants émanant de l'utilisation de ces produits vraiment à forte dose en lipides. Donc personne n'ignore qu'il faut être extrêmement vigilant sur l'utilisation de ces produits.
The therapeutic treatment of severe malnutrition is one thing, with its success and limitations. But the undernutrition of entire populations is a long-term issue. Current treatment developments involve adding nutritional complements to ordinary food. The large-scale distribution of supplemented food represents a new economic stakes that are currently changing the structure of the agro-food industry.
I think we'll see some big changes in the production side and the distribution side. That is, whereas the Plumpy'nut producers are fairly specialized, small-scale facilities, to get the kind of scale will be cost-effective, enough to support, enough that the products are accessible to poor households. I think you need. I think we'll see a different set of players entering the market. And the best example here, I think, is if you've been to rural Africa, you see the Magi cubes and you see Nestle products in the dustiest, most remote places in Africa. If you're talking about a private distribution of a supplement, those are the kind of players that know how to do that. Those are the kind of players who can achieve scale to reduce costs, to distribute supplements into rural areas in Africa. It's not the specialized firms who have really revolutionized the treatment of malnutrition through Plumpy'nut type products. It's a shift towards the kind of private sector activity that you see in rural Africa today. And I think there'll be some mix of the two. I think, and as an example, there is a project in Ethiopia right now that involves PepsiCo and small-scale Ethiopian farmers through production contracts, producing cowpeas for a cowpea-based, ready-to-use therapeutic food. But it's PepsiCo who's really structuring that value chain. PepsiCo has structured the market from the production in the field to the processing in the plant to the distribution. They'll be drawn into the sector if they see that as a viable market.
But there's only a small step going from enriched foods, like food supplements, to the purely recreational food that the major food industry companies already distribute all over the world.
If you're a food company, your objective is to sell more of your product, no matter what that product is. If you're Coca-Cola or PepsiCo and you're making soft drinks and snack foods, India has more than 1 billion people, and some enormous percentage of those people may not have very much money, but they have enough to buy an occasional Coke, Pepsi, or snack food of one kind or another. And this is true of all companies that are moving into India. I mean, if you look at what's happening in the United States, sales of soft drinks are down. They've been going down for 10 or 15 years. They keep going down. So if companies are going to continue to make the same level of profit, they either have to find new products that people in the United States will buy, or they have to find new markets for their products. And so they're all going into Asia, Africa, and India, where that's where the populations are.
India has the second largest population in the world and is its fourth farming sector. The country fails to feed half its inhabitants, and yet it represents an ideal potential customer base for the invasion of a food substitute, junk food.
I was in India. I was, first of all, amazed to find that PepsiCo potato chips, Frito-Lay potato chips, a company owned by PepsiCo, were absolutely everywhere. In remote villages where there were no other sources of food other than what people were growing themselves, there would be little roadside stands with Frito-Lay potato chips of one kind or another. And then, of course, I brought back this Kellogg's cereal that advertised on the back of it that you should use this chocolate-sweetened breakfast cereal as a replacement for chapatis. That's a deliberate attempt to encourage mothers to think that this is a healthier food than what they're making themselves. This is not about health, it's about business. Is this good for the public health of people in these countries? Of course not. But this isn't about public health. These companies are not social service agencies, they're businesses, and their job is to expand sales. They're very good at it.
I think it's not surprising that the poorer and less governed states and those where people have less voice are also the ones that tend to be targeted by these commercial interests, because it's much easier, if you have a lot of money and connections, you can go to a place like Ranchi and quite easily talk to a bureaucrat and persuade them to adopt something like that that's not appropriate. Maybe you may have to pay them a bribe or something, and nobody will be there to notice and to raise the alarm. So I don't think it's surprising that these things are particularly prevalent in the poorer states.
Resisting market pressure and finding a way to feed the population, whilst at the same time ensuring public health, is what's known as defining a food policy. But there can be no food policy without an agricultural policy, and it is the lack of effective structuring between them that lies at the root of all undernutrition tragedies worldwide.
La malnutrition aiguë est un sujet complètement nouveau et qui n'est pas du tout traité aujourd'hui en Inde. On a eu une déclaration du Premier ministre Manmohan Singh il y a quelques années qui déclarait que cette malnutrition aiguë était la honte de l'Inde moderne et qu'il fallait traiter ce problème de fond. Aujourd'hui, on estime qu'il y a 19 millions d'enfants dans le monde qui souffrent de cette malnutrition aiguë. 8 millions d'entre eux vivent en Inde. 40% de cette malnutrition mondiale est en Inde. Et aujourd'hui, malgré tous les efforts, malgré les différentes initiatives prises depuis une vingtaine d'années en Inde, on n'est pas encore en mesure de faire un dépistage et un traitement systématique des enfants malnutris dans la plupart des États indiens.
किसको पसंद है? हाँ? सब खाते हैं। सबसे अच्छा क्या लगता है? बताओ। हलवा, खिचड़ी या नमकीन दलिया, मीठा दलिया बताओ। मुझे खिचड़ी अच्छा लगता है। उसको सारी चीजें पसंद है। मुझे सिर्फ खिचड़ी पसंद है। Yes, please. मुझे हलवा पसंद है। मेरी चाची ना पहले वो रोज खाती थी। वो छोरा अच्छा।
I don't think the government wants to become a welfare state. I think the government is under pressure to respond to people's demands for basic facilities. Indian society for centuries has been completely focused on serving a very privileged minority. India is making this very historical transition now from a society which is completely serving a privileged minority of upper caste men, basically, and now trying to become a more democratic society where people really matter and there's some kind of basic equality and at least universal access to very basic facilities, protection from hunger, healthcare, education, sanitation, things that really everybody should have.
Alors il y a deux choses qui viennent d'être décidées par le gouvernement indien. Une première loi qui vient de passer, qui incite les entreprises à être plus enclins à donner une partie de leurs bénéfices aux actions caritatives. Donc ça, c'est un premier geste qui pourrait effectivement encourager l'investissement sur les œuvres sociales en Inde. Et la deuxième loi concerne cette Food Security Bill, cette décision d'allouer une nourriture, enfin des quantités alimentaires supplémentaires aux populations les plus déshéritées. Ça correspond à peu près à 75% des populations les plus pauvres en milieu rural et 50% des populations les plus pauvres en urbain, avec une donation de 5 kg de céréales par personne.
वो है यहाँ है और भी कई जगह जाएंगे कई जगह जाएंगे.
Et ce que l'on sait, c'est qu'aujourd'hui, malheureusement, l'ensemble de ces aides allouées aux populations indiennes sont en grande partie englouties par le coût de la mise en place des projets. On estime que plus de 50%, notamment des programmes de distribution, sont consommés par leur propre fonctionnement. Et une bonne partie, un bon tiers, est détourné par des gens qui profitent du système. Donc en fait, c'est une infime partie, 20-30% de ces aides, qui arrivent auprès des populations. Donc, cette nouvelle décision du gouvernement indien est généreuse, elle va coûter très cher. La grande question est de savoir est-ce qu'elle va vraiment permettre de changer la donne et aider les gens à sortir de la pauvreté.
दारू मंगाओ या समोसा का भला ईमानदारी इसमें है नहीं, सब चोरी मक्कारी काम है। राशन में हम लोग कोई भी हस्तक्षेप नहीं करते, मिट्टी के तेल में थोड़ा बहुत हेर फेर करते हैं, राशन में नहीं करते, न चीनी भी नहीं करते। चीनी यूनिट आती है, यूनिट देते हैं 10-20 किलो अगर बचाया तो उसमें खर्चे हैं, कहीं थाने पे है, कहीं किसी की 10-20 किलो बच गई, बाकी चीनी में कुछ नहीं, गल्ला चीनी में कुछ नहीं, मिट्टी तेल में हम लोग मैनेज करके चलते हैं।
फ्रांस 24 चैनल, फ्रांस 24 ये फ्रेंच में भी होता है, इंग्लिश में भी होता है। ये यहाँ अरे ये सब कलाकार होते हैं।
There is an Indian paradox. The country is overflowing with stocks of cereal, while 300 million Indians are suffering from hunger and do not have access to wheat or rice for a daily meal. It is a long-term consequence of the movement that started changing the country and its agricultural economy in the 1960s. What is known as the Green Revolution resulted in a technological leap from traditional farming methods to mechanized agriculture, involving new high-yield seeds and the use of fertilizers. Through a combination of modernization and irrigation, in the space of a few years, India has become not only self-sufficient in, but also an exporter of cereal. It has increased its wheat production tenfold and its rice production threefold. This economic success has destabilized small farmers' lives. Falling agricultural prices and small farmers' debt have had tragic consequences. The country has experienced wide-scale rural exodus and a massive spate of small farmer suicides, currently 1 every 30 minutes, and 270,000 since the late 1990s. One Indian activist is defending these small farmers. She has come to Brussels to campaign for another green revolution, a twice green one this time, at the occasion of a debate on a European draft bill that would restrict free access to seeds.
You know, I've been working as an activist, as a scientist, for more than 40 years. And there's been a period when there was a semblance of democracy in our societies before corporate rule. And in that period, it worked, you know. You could pick up trees and be a defender of trees. You could love whales and be a defender of whales. You could, by and large, seed and agriculture was an orphan. But you could pick your favorite little thing and go at it and go at it and go at it because the system was responsive. Globalization has established corporate rule. Now, the systems that should be responding to us are now responding to the corporations. If we only look at that, we can get overwhelmed. But if we realize that this is the biggest challenge humanity has ever faced, right now what we are having to deal with is really a very giant public relations machinery on the one hand and a lobby battalion on the other. It's the lobby group that comes here, and the public relations machinery is just all over the place. All of them say the same things. And I think that's where we really have to think hard. I think definitely the social media is a place where we can send other messages, but 5 simple messages we need to get out. This is not a food system. 72% food comes from small farms. 75% of the planetary destruction is from industrial agriculture. So whether it is ecological imperative or the imperative of producing more food, ecological farming and agroecology is the way, and we are doing right now a course on our farm, because of the demands from it. And young people, bankers and software engineers want to farm. And what we've proposed here is the objectives of diversity. Every small farmer wants diversity. The objectives of quality, which include taste, flavor, nutrition, and the objective of resilience to deal with climate change.
Nous cultivons, c'est nos femmes qui vendent ça au marché, au petit marché. On fait tout. On fait tout. Le maraîchage, c'est nous. Si tu viens ici, tu vas trouver n'importe quelle sorte comment dirais-je, de maraîchers. Que ce soit la carotte, la tomate, laitue, la pomme de terre, l'arachide, tout on met ici, le gombo, pastèque, melon, on fait tout ici. C'est la coopérative maraîchère de Gamkali. C'est une place qu'on a héritée. Nos anciens pères, ce sont eux qui ont commencé à faire le maraîchage là. Moi, je peux dire que j'ai trouvé mon grand-père en train de faire le maraîcher, mon père a fait le maraîcher, et me voilà, je suis là-dedans. J'ai mes fils aussi qui me suivent, qui continuent à le faire. Nous, on n'a pas de champs, on n'a rien. on fait seulement uniquement le maraîchage, à toute saison.
Africa did not experience the continent-wide green revolution India did. Local agriculture remains diverse, true to tradition, and importantly centered around notions such as the community and family integration. Niger is a good example of a country in which efforts are being made to define an agricultural policy that is also in parallel a food policy at the service of its citizens. Nigerians feeding Nigerians is the watchword of the policy. This is a citizens' festival, Milk Day.
Le rôle de la plateforme, c'est de voir en quoi ces textes de loi, ces décrets, ces arrêtés, ces projets, ces programmes prennent en compte les préoccupations des producteurs et se positionnent par rapport à ça. Il faut qu'on se nourrisse. C'est l'affirmation de la volonté de l'État de faire de l'agriculture notre cheval de bataille. En termes d'élevage, en termes de maraîchage, en termes de culture dunaire pluviale, qu'est-ce que les producteurs peuvent produire avec leurs propres techniques sans apport des produits chimiques qui, reconnaissons-le aujourd'hui, causent un ravage en termes de santé au niveau de la population. Est-ce que le lait produit ici chez nous qu'on vend à moins de 500 francs le litre, est-ce qu'il n'est pas 10-15 fois plus riche que les poudres de lait importées? Tout ce qu'on nous présente dans des sachets avec plein d'emblèmes de publicité, nous disons méfions-nous. À la télé, on vient, on cherche quelqu'un, un bon humoriste, qui vient, qui lui dit « Ah, consommer ça, c'est très bien, ça donne la santé, ça donne la force, et vous êtes bien, il faut consommer, c'est moins cher. » Vous prenez un an, c'est les maladies qui commencent dans la famille. Et ça joue sur l'économie de la famille. Si sur l'étalage, vous l'achetez moins cher, après un an de consommation, ce que vous allez payer à la pharmacie, dans les centres de soins, pour recouvrer la santé de la famille, mais ça va vous revenir 2, 3, 4 fois plus cher. Mais lorsque vous mangez le chou local, le lait local, les moringas, tout ce qu'on produit dans nos jardins et tout ça là, difficilement vous avez le diabète, difficilement vous avez les tensions et autres. Vous êtes à l'abri de tout ça.
The real debate is which food systems do we want and what role will democracy play in shaping the food systems that work for the earth, for the producers and farmers, and for the people and the citizens. So two very important aspects that are missing in this are the farmers, not the small breeders and small conservation farmers, but the producers who need an access to a diversity of seed options and need an access to non-GMO seed and need an access to non-patented seed. And that is a farmer's right. That right of farmers as producers is not being talked about. And I'll send the language that we've got into our laws on farmers' rights, which basically ends up being the farmers' rights to have a very broad system of open access seeds. It's basically an open access seed system that we need to create. This law is creating a closed access system. What do you call this?
Melon.
Huh?
That's all the English name. It's also in India.
A volunteer crop in wheat.
Yes.
And it's so rich in iron and vitamin A. You don't need golden rice if you don't kill this crop. You know, I'm a quantum physicist. If I'm not doing quantum theory today, it's about this big lie that the corporations have told, that their kind of farming feeds the world and this kind of farming cannot. This is the kind of farming that accounts for nearly 75% of the food supply. This is Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, 2013. 72% food is coming from small farms, and it's not counting the gardens, which don't get into national statistics. So if we take the gardens, we're talking about more than 75% food comes from farms like this. Only 25% comes from industrial agriculture. It's bad food. It's what's giving people all kinds of diseases because of the toxics. And for those who say we need genetic engineering, let's look at the performance of genetic engineering. The growth on corn and soya, 10% of the corn and soya is used for human food. The rest is raw material for high fructose corn syrup for Coca-Cola, for biofuels to drive cars, for animal feed to torture animals. A 10% system cannot pretend to be feeding the world when all they're doing is poisoning the world. The real food system are farms like this. We need to make them grow. We need everywhere local, ecological, diverse farming and gardening.
Regardless of relationship in figures between food agricultural production and agro-industrial production, the central issue in Brussels as in Paris remains that of agriculture as a guarantee of food security.
Quand on fait de la sécurité alimentaire, en tout cas pour l'Union européenne, notre objectif est toujours d'améliorer la situation nutritionnelle des populations. L'agriculture est une des pistes. Et gardons en tête que pour l'Afrique, 60% de l'emploi, c'est l'agriculture aujourd'hui. Donc il y a nécessité de travailler sur l'emploi, surtout que c'est 60% de l'emploi, mais c'est plus de 80% des pauvres les plus extrêmes. Et ce taux de pauvreté ou le différentiel ville-campagne est en train d'augmenter. Un dernier point qu'on a également mentionné durant différentes présentations de ce matin, c'est que la nutrition, c'est également un problème de résilience. Et qu'aujourd'hui, la population rurale est beaucoup plus exposée que la population urbaine. Elle est exposée aux fluctuations des prix agricoles, on en a parlé ce matin, elle est exposée aux aléas climatiques, la sécheresse, les inondations. Tout ça, ce sont des choses qui impactent l'entièreté de l'économie d'un pays en voie de développement, mais beaucoup plus la population rurale. Ce qui explique aussi le pourquoi il y a une attention particulière sur l'agriculture. Et enfin, rappelons qu'aujourd'hui, le déficit en termes de denrées alimentaires des pays les plus pauvres n'arrête pas de grandir et que c'est simplement, pour un certain nombre de pays, une question de survie économique. Pour l'Afrique subsaharienne, qui fait l'objet d'études plus importantes, ce déficit a été multiplié par 4 en 10 ans. Il est passé de 10 milliards de dollars à 40 milliards de dollars par an. C'est un montant très significatif qui dépasse largement l'aide au développement qu'on peut donner pour compenser ce déficit.
Thank you. We have just about a little less than under 10 minutes left, so if you could make your comments short and brief and to the point, that would be great. I know we have someone down here, there.
Ouais, merci. Albert, UNICEF Mali. Ma question, c'est sur l'hypothèque des terres africaines actuellement par les secteurs privés qui les achètent, les terres agricoles, qui fait que comme on est en train de les hypothéquer aujourd'hui, on prépare la fin de demain. Donc, les paysans africains, hier, on a dit qu'il fallait travailler sur l'agriculture vivrière pour nourrir les familles, mais en même temps, on est en train d'assister à la vente des terres agricoles africaines à des multitudes d'entreprises. Donc, on est en train d'hypothéquer la terre de paysans. On va assister bientôt à la chasse des paysans sur leurs terres. Et comme nous avons les parlementaires dans la salle et que nous avons nos ministres dans la salle, quelle est la perspective de gestion entre cet achat que les privés font et l'intérêt national qui est d'assurer quand même la production pour les générations futures sur leurs propriétaires.
The race for unexploited land on a global scale has picked up pace since the 2008 financial and food crisis. Countries like China, South Korea, Russia and Saudi Arabia are constantly buying up or renting the farming land they lack.
Investment banks in New York City are buying land not because they plan to farm it. They haven't a clue on how to farm that land. They're buying it as an investment. And they know the price of land is going to go up. For the last 7 years, the increase in land prices worldwide has been double the increase in the Dow Jones Industrial Index. But land has become a scarce asset, and the water that goes with that land is becoming even more scarce. Land is the new gold. Food is the new oil.
Whether gold or oil, new deposits are now forming at the bottom of researchers' test tubes as they work on inventing or reinventing the food of tomorrow. California is the home terrain of these prospectors. Startups are mushrooming, financed by foundations of the web giants, which are well acquainted with all issues relating to the future of man, health and food included. In 2012, $350 million were invested in food innovation startups.
This band of young scientists and culinary whiz kids is figuring out how to use plants to take the place of eggs in cooking. Plant-based eggs are shelf-stable, use less energy to make, cost less, and are safer for consumption. Now they're on the brink of a breakthrough into the impossible.
The animals that we consume, either the egg products, the meat, whatever it is, we give them more food. We give them more food than we do the 1.3 billion people that go to bed hungry every single night. We think that's silly. We think that we can find ways to bring the cost of food way, way down, using the world of plants, 92% of which haven't even been explored for their role in food products. And we think by identifying them and by giving them to people who need it the most, we can feed more people at a price that makes a lot of sense. And we can cut into, obviously, the serious issue of world hunger and hopefully do a little good for the environment at the same time. So everywhere from large food distributors that are all across West Africa and Southern Africa and East Africa, places that I've lived, to large food companies in China that we're in conversations with, to large food conglomerates in Latin America. We have conversations with them, we sell product to them, and even through agencies like USAID and the World Food Program, who we're even in early conversations with about getting our product out to the people who need it the most. Using technology to leap over animals in cages and animals getting fed lots of soy and corn to something that's just better, that just makes more sense. And I think you're going to have a return to, more sustainable approaches to animal agriculture, where instead of housing animals in close conditions, which are havens for food safety issues, people are going to raise animals in open areas. And it's going to be a combination of people sort of returning to the roots kind of on both fronts. And we're excited to be a part of the leap towards using sustainable technology to make things better.
Changing the world by thinking differently is Silicon Valley's motto. It has proven it can revolutionize social communication systems, but it also has the power to act on the real world. And if eggs can do without hens, could meat not do without animals?
Often I'll be asked, why are you trying to replicate meat versus just encouraging people to eat protein in its legume form or similar? And get asked that all the time. It's something I think about all the time. And for me, it comes down to a cultural adherence to meat. It's something that is deeply ingrained in our evolutionary history. You know, if you look at meat, you break it down in terms of what actually comprises meat. You have collagen, you have proteins, you have some carbohydrates. At the end of the day, if it tastes like meat, provides the nutritional value of meat, and can be used like meat, why does it matter where the amino acids came from? And for us, that's really the question we're posing to consumers is, we're able to take plant-based protein, extract it from the plants, run it through a very simple system that uses natural forces of heating, cooling, and pressure to realign the proteins so that they mimic the fibrous structure that you'll find in muscle, in animal tissue, in meat. And we present that to consumers in the form of chicken or in the form of beef.
Tastes like chicken.
What is fascinating to me about the international applications of this is we have just scratched the surface on the number of species or plants that you can extract. It takes time for an idea and for technology to have the disruption that you want. And sometimes, and I think Victor Hugo said this, there's no idea, there's nothing more powerful than an idea whose time has come.
An idea's time may have come in California, but not in Africa. The prime concern of African small farmers is most definitely not to learn how to extract proteins from cereal to make it look like beef or chicken.
እኛ አሁን እዚህ ሆነን ይሄ ፖል ከቆመልን 2 ዓመታችን ነው። እስካሁን ድረስ ማብራት ያልገባልን ምን ማንገድ ላይ ሆነን ምንም አላየነው። የኛ እንጂ ገበሬ አሁን አልሞትም። ለምን እርሻ ሞተር ገዝቶ እንትን ወንዝ ላይ እየተከለ በእንትን እየተጠቀመ ነው በሞተር። በቃ በአሁኑ ጊዜ አታክልት ብዙ አለ፣ ግን ገበሬ እንትን ይለፋል። በዚህ ወጪ ነው ምን አረጋው? እድገት የለም ወደታችን።
A lack of electricity and transportation are not the only issues they face. There is also the price of fertilizers, the threat of climate change, the degradation of environment, and quite simply what we refer to as poverty. And when poverty takes a turn for the worse, the only thing a small farmer can do is become a migrant in his own country, as is the case for 750 million people today, all over the world.